In the heart of London, where tradition meets the unexpected, a chipper cheeseburger lover named Bobby inadvertently challenges the towering authority of Samuel, a stern royal guard. In a moment of impulsive playfulness, Bobby tosses his leftover burger piece right at Samuel's polished boots, triggering gasps and laughter from a curious crowd. But what unfolds next is a delightful clash of humor and pride, prompting both men to confront their preconceptions of respect and authority. Can the small fry teach the big man a lesson about humility? Or will rigid tradition overshadow spontaneous joy? In the heart of London, where the symphony of city life thrummed with energy, a kaleidoscope of colors danced through the air. The iconic structures of the metropolis stood tall against the sky. The majestic Big Ben loomed in the distance, crowned by wisps of clouds while the Tower Bridge acted as a shimmering gateway across the River Thames. Crowds of tourists meandered along the cobblestone streets, their laughter and chatter mingling with the sounds of rushing buses and the distant notes of street performers. Carts selling everything from fish and chips to bright red double-decker buses lined the sidewalks, creating a mosaic of sights and scents that made London irresistibly vibrant. Among the throng was Bobby, a chubby man with rosy cheeks that matched his jovial demeanor. A self-proclaimed food lover, his warm laughter echoed as he ambled through the bustling crowd. With an ever-present twinkle in his eye, Bobby was known for his carefree spirit and a heart that seemed to embrace everyone around him. Clad in a bright yellow t-shirt that hugged his belly, which shook mirthfully as he walked, he attracted smiles wherever he roamed. Today, he declared to himself, would be a day of indulgence. Bobby's heart raced as he approached a nearby vendor, his mouth watering at the sight of a monstrous cheeseburger glistening under the mid-afternoon sun. The bun, soft and fluffy, cradled a juicy patty topped with melting cheese, crispy bacon, and fresh veggies. He could hardly contain his delight as he exchanged notes for the sumptuous offering, cradling it like a treasured prize. Finding a bench under the shade of a wide oak tree, he sank into it with a contented sigh, the world around him disappearing as he took his first huge bite. "Blimey, this is brilliant!" he exclaimed, his voice rising above the distractions of the street. He squinted into the sunlight, pulling exaggerated faces as he munched, drawing amused glances from passers-by. Each bite seemed to amplify his childlike joy, his laughter infectious. Just a few steps away, Samuel stood resolutely as a bastion of discipline. The royal guard, clad in his crisp red tunic and tall, fuzzy bearskin hat, cut an imposing figure. His eyes, sharp and fixed ahead, overlooked the throngs of gawking tourists, many pulling out their phones to capture the quintessential London experience. A royal guard in all his grandeur. Respected, revered, and often the subject of playful banter, Samuel bore the weight of tradition and decorum like an impenetrable shield, silently proud of his role as a protector of royal heritage. However, as he stood at his post, an unexpected flicker of turmoil bubbled beneath his stern exterior. Samuel, a man of unwavering resolve, often grappled with the demands of his position, feeling trapped by the rigid expectations that came with it. Today, while the sun warmed the pavement and tourists gaggled, he felt the pressure of his unyielding duty clashing with an inner desire for connection, a longing to shed the faceless authority he embodied. Within moments of Bobby's joyful feast, in a blend of humor and mischief, he suddenly chucked the remaining half of the cheeseburger toward the guard, his laughter echoing in the air. A gasp rippled through the crowd, disbelief settling in as amused expressions filled their faces. Samuel's eyes widened, an amalgamation of shock and disbelief washing over him. "What in the world?" he stammered, the absurdity of the moment anchoring his stance temporarily. It was a ridiculous stunt, one that reverberated against the backdrop of a city built on centuries of tradition. Bobby's laughter mingled with the surprised gasps, an electric tingle thrumming through the air as the bystanders found themselves captivated by the spectacle. But even as amusement danced in his chest, Bobby realized with a growing apprehension that he might have crossed an invisible boundary. Samuel stood tall, his posture manifesting the gravity of his role. "This is no place for such disrespect," he declared, his voice slicing through the laughter like a knife. Around them, the crowd quieted, curiosity peaking as they watched the two men, one radiant with humor, the other glimmering with authority. In that instant, the stage was set for a confrontation that would awaken unanticipated emotions, leaving the air charged with the promise of a deeper connection waiting to unfold amidst the noise of London life. As Bobby leaned back on the bench, the remnants of his cheeseburger languished in his hand, its greasy patty suggesting a never-ending source of humor and joy. The laughter of nearby tourists echoed in his ears, blending with the brisk air of London. He spotted a cluster of children giggling at his exaggerated bites, laden with mustard and bits of lettuce. Nikki, his closest friend who had accompanied him, nudged him with a playful wink. "Show them your best face, Bobby," she encouraged with a mischievous grin. Inspired, Bobby turned toward the tall figure of the royal guard, Samuel, painted in stoic authority. In that moment of whimsical exuberance, Bobby flung the lesser half of his cheeseburger like an eager jester at court, aiming for humor but hitting a wall of tradition instead. The piece landed at Samuel's polished boots, its juicy contents betraying the pride of his uniform. A gasp swept through the crowd like wildfire, an invisible thread binding both excitement and disbelief. The mood, once lighthearted, suddenly shifted as Samuel's jaw clenched tight, the tension crackling in the air. What the bloody hell do you think you're doing?" Samuel's voice boomed over the gas, his brow furrowing into a formidable glare. Bobby's laughter stuttered as it caught in his throat, the harsh burst of authority making him reconsider his cheeky antics. The lightheartedness of the moment dimmed, and a tension simmered on the busy street. "Oi, I was just having a laugh," Bobby replied, an edge of bashfulness creeping into his words, though the twinkle of mischief still filled his eye. "You, look a bit serious for a guy guarding a gate. Relax, mate. Life's too short for that stick-up your—" "Respect goes both ways," Samuel interjected, his tone unyielding. "You think this is some kind of joke? I stand here to maintain dignity. Have you any idea how many tourists look to me for an image of British composure?" Bobby's heart sank, a stark contrast to his initial amusement. The laughter faded as eyes narrowed upon him, casting him not as a jovial rebel, but a capricious troublemaker. "Sure, but can't a guy goof off a bit? I mean, come on!" He gestured toward the tourists, one of whom threw him a thumbs up. "It's all about having a good time." Samuel, unmoved by Bobby's enthusiasm, leaned closer as the crowd erupted in whispers, the stakes mounting higher with every second. "You need to understand, it's not about fun at my expense. My role demands dignity, and I will not tolerate such disrespect. Don't you have any idea the history behind this? It's not a circus where you can throw your leftovers around." Bobby, cornered but not vanquished, caught the wounded look behind Samuel's stern mask. "You're right, I might not get it all," he said, the momentum of his rebellion swelling again like a rising tide. "But isn't there more to life than standing still in one place? You can't let that hat define you. What about letting loose a little? Just think, you can be both a guard and, you know, a person." "Is that so?" Samuel shot back, brows arching in a mixture of disbelief and intrigue. The glint of challenge ignited in Bobby's eyes. His resolve hardened. "Absolutely. I mean, look at you. The shiny uniform, the rigid posture. It's all a bit much, don't you think? It's like you've become your job." "Not everything is a joke, Bobby," Samuel retorted, his hand clenched around the ceremonial sword at his side, revealing the tension lining his otherwise polished exterior. He felt a shift within himself, some long-buried emotion stirring at Bobby's accusations. But he stayed rigid, unwilling to delve into the vulnerabilities that he had meticulously guarded. "Sure, but do you really believe you can inspire respect and admiration with that attitude of yours?" Bobby felt his heart racing, the urge to stand his ground overwhelming, his chubby frame somehow shaking with purpose. "You think the tourists come to see a statue? They want to see the real you." As silence enveloped the street momentarily, tension palpable as all eyes remained fixed on the two men, Samuel's composure began to crack just enough for Bobby to seize that gold. "The tourists are only here for the show, you know," he continued, emboldened by Samuel's wavering demeanor. "But underneath this laughter, There's a sentiment that can cut deeper than your sword, that you're just a man in a giant hat, with all that pressure weighing on your shoulders. Samuel, rattled by Bobby's unexpected vulnerability, took a step back, his eyes betraying the internal war he wrestled. A flicker of understanding crossed between the two, forged from the heat of the moment, igniting a whisper of possibility. But just as it seemed one of them might break the standoff, a sharp voice broke through the tension. "Hey, what's going on here?" a nearby man shouted, shoving his way toward the front of the crowd, eyes darting between the guard and the jester. In an instant, the moment suspended in time collapsed back into chaos. The whispers rippled through the onlookers, thick with speculation, and the surrounding laughter felt closer than ever to a knife edge. Clutching the remnants of his dignity, Samuel straightened, the facade of the unyielding soldier reimagined amidst the uncertainty and despair. But for Bobby, standing his ground was no longer a jest. It was an awakening, a dance on the precipice of confrontation and connection. "What are you going to do now?" Bobby asked, the question poised in the air like the sharp end of a sword, waiting for Samuel's reply. The crowd hushed with anticipation. Samuel looked at Bobby, then at the crowd, his emotions settling somewhere between frustration and wonder. What had their laughter really meant? I'll show you what a real guard is made of," he finally said, steely resolve in his gaze, though uncertainty lingered just beneath the surface. The crowd leaned closer, breaths hitching as the stage was fully set. And there it was, a singular question united them, glistening in the tension. Would Samuel dare to step beyond the veil of self-imposed isolation, or would he remain the prison of his own making? The story was far from over. The air around them crackled with energy. The gathered crowd hushed, breaths held in anticipation. Bobby, his heart thundering, stepped closer to Samuel, the royal guard's imposing figure looming before him like an immovable mountain. "Look, mate," he began, voice steady yet tinged with a hint of mischief. "I may be just a guy with a cheeseburger, but you're only here standing in one spot all day, right? Doesn't it ever get boring?" Samuel's brow furrowed as he straightened his back, surprised by the audacity of the chubby man. "Boring," he replied, his voice an indomitable growl. "This is not a game. I preserve tradition. Respect is paramount." Bobby crossed his arms, shaking his head in disbelief. The tourists shifting on their feet watched with rapt attention. "Respect? Is that just for people in shiny uniforms? What about me? I have value too, you know. Just because I'm not standing still in a hat doesn't mean I'm not deserving of it." Samuel's mouth tightened, his rigid expression softening just a fraction as he processed Bobby's words. "You think I don't see that?" he snapped, but his voice lost its edge. "I see a clown tossing food in front of me. Haven't you ever thought what kind of impression you're making?" The laughter from the crowd dried up, replaced by an uneasy silence. Bobby's voice dropped, earnestness creasing his brow. "Look, I didn't mean to insult you. I just thought, well, life's too short, right? We should be able to laugh. Not everything's about standing on ceremony." He took a breath, measuring his next words. "Every single person here wants to feel like they matter. Even you." Their eyes locked for a moment, each reflecting a swirl of emotions swirling beneath the surface. Samuel's heart beat heavily in his chest, confronted with Bobby's genuine plea for empathy. The transformation flickered through the royal guard's stern demeanor, and he too began to see the other side of the coin. "You're right," he finally admitted, his voice low enough for only Bobby to hear. "There's a weight to this hat, a pressure to maintain an image. I've forgotten how to just be, and perhaps today, you reminded me." Bobby offered a half smile, the tension releasing its grip. "Then be silly for once. Let the people see the man behind the uniform. They'd love it." Samuel hesitated, glancing at the audience. The realization that he could step outside his rigid frame of duty turned the air electric between them. It was a turning point, one where a soldier could afford to curtail his pride. This unexpected camaraderie could redefine that very respect both had clung to, unveiling a rare connection. In the aftermath of their unexpected encounter, London buzzed with a new narrative. Bobby, once a carefree man who tossed his leftovers with abandon, had emerged as a local hero for standing up to authority. The heartwarming story of his friendship with Samuel resonated throughout the streets, redefining both men in the eyes of those who had witnessed the event. Bobby discovered a sense of self-respect he hadn't realized he was lacking. His courage ignited a newfound purpose to appreciate the little moments in life. He found himself sharing his cheeseburgers with others at local parks, laughing with fellow food lovers while recounting his tale. Samuel, too, evolved. His rigid demeanor softened with each passing day. No longer just the stern royal guard rooted in tradition, he took pleasure in connecting with the tourists who flocked to London, sharing the story of the cheeky man who had challenged him in the most delightful way. With a smile, he donned his shiny uniform, not just as a symbol of authority, but as a reminder of a simple truth he had learned from Bobby, that humor and humanity can coexist. Through their odd friendship, both men illustrated that respect thrives on empathy and vulnerability, leaving a legacy of connection and laughter in the heart of London.